Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirming Wednesday in a post to X that military has carried out yet another boat strike that he claims was engaged in narco trafficking, this time in the Pacific.
It marks the 14th vessel that has been destroyed by the military since the beginning of September. 4 people killed in that strike, bringing the total number of deaths to more than 60. Hegseth wrote in that post, quote, "This vessel, like all the others, was known by our intelligence to be involved in illicit narcotics smuggling, was transiting along a known narco-trafficking route and carrying narcotics." He continued, "The Western Hemisphere is no longer a safe haven for narco-terrorists bringing drugs to our shores to poison Americans. The Department of War will continue to hunt them down and eliminate them wherever they operate."
Now, this comes the same day as the Trump administration reportedly briefed more than a dozen senators on the recent strikes. But Senator Mark Warner says Democrats weren't even invited to that briefing. He told an ABC reporter in a statement, quote, "Shutting Democrats out of a briefing on U.S. military strikes and withholding the legal justification for those strikes from half of the Senate is indefensible and dangerous. Decisions about the use of American military force are not campaign strategy sessions, and they are not private property of one political party." Meantime, more Republicans on the Hill are starting to push back against the administration's narco-trafficking campaign that has not yet been approved from Congress.
Ohio Representative Mike Turner, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee, expressed some frustration with how little information Congress is getting from the White House. Take a look.
I don't think anybody has openly and publicly stated a full support of what the administration is doing, because no one has full presentation yet from the administration
of what they're
doing to support it. I think what
By
people
the way,
have
can I
said,
just say that's a pretty scary thing for you to say,
right,
considering that you're on that committee.
Right, and I do think that there are serious concerns as to both the legal construct as to what the administration is doing, and there needs to be more information that's provided to Congress.
But Republican Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday suggested that Americans are largely supportive of the strikes, that the president may not need congressional approval after all.
I think most Americans feel very good about the idea that we're punishing drug cartels that are flooding the country with poisonous drugs. The president has all the authority in the world, and if you want to fight over this, let's fight over it. I think most Americans are going to be with Trump.
Now, Connecticut Democrat Representative Jim Himes hit back on the idea hard later last night, offering a hypothetical that took some off guard.
Lindsey Graham and other Republicans want to go the route of saying it's okay to kill people illegally, just so long as the American public supports it. The American public needs to really think that through. You know, there will be a Democratic president someday, and all my MAGA friends who are, cheering on these illegal killings need to imagine who gets killed when President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that it doesn't matter what the law says, she's going to do what she's going to do.
Yeah, if it's so popular, then just vote for it. I don't. That's fine. It might very well be the case that a vast majority of Americans do support us blowing up these boats. Then just vote for it. Then you should feel encouraged to hold that vote. So I don't get what Lindsey Graham is saying. It was nice to see Representative Turner expressing some apprehension. Again, he's not saying we want to derail these efforts, legitimate efforts to take down drug smugglers. That might be a completely legitimate action, but the administration, the White House, the War Department need to explain to lawmakers what they're doing, and then lawmakers need to vote to approve it. It's that simple. Just do the vote. Just do it the proper way, and then we won't get into this argument and present the evidence to the lawmakers that, well, this is the strategy and this is the plan and this is why it's important. Just do that.
I talked about this a lot in my lens yesterday, and I think that this is not about a war on drugs for me. It's about what are the rules of war and do they apply? Mm-hmm. I think that we have to include Congress in this because for years, law enforcement has handled situations like this. For years, we've called these counter-narcotics missions and treated them as such. And just recently, the president in the last few months has decided to categorize them as counterterrorism missions. And that gives him kind of the bandwidth to just decide that he's striking both. And the alarming thing when I was reading the New York Times report about what some of these issues are that people are bringing up about who's on these boats was someone that I talked about yesterday. A family of a man from Trinidad and Tobago was like, wait, My son was a fisherman that was in Venezuela
So
and
he
was
says.
killed on a boat. Right, but that's one example.
Yeah.
And so if we do kill a civilian and even make that mistake, then we have murder on our hands as Americans because the president said so, without Congress going to war or without us agreeing that we are in a war with Venezuela and with drug smugglers. And I think that's a key part of what our Constitution asks us to do, is to move forward and allow Congress to be that decision maker in these things, in any type of war. And I think once we talk about land, I mean, the president has already toyed with the idea of taking this to land. And if he does, that certainly cannot be just considered anything more than an act of war. I mean, anything less than an act of war. We need to talk to Congress about that. So I think skipping that step is, like you said, problematic. No one has an issue with going to war with people bringing drugs in this country. I'm well aware, as somebody who grew up in Long Island, how deeply drugs do affect, because that's a place where we're greatly affected in our Long Island school district. Maybe it's everywhere, but I remember how rampant it was even when I was starting to graduate, about how much opioids and different drugs can start to affect people. I don't think that's something that's not a noble cause to go after. I think there's a certain way that we have done things for years, and I don't think the president should shy away from that because he has a different idea. That's why we have branches of government, and that's constantly a theme that I bring up, is that he tends to want to skip some steps in order to get things done quickly, but I'd rather get them done right and not kill any civilians in the process.
Yeah, I agree. And if we're considering sending in ground troops, I mean, how could you do that without having a vote? And also, how could you expect that would enjoy majority support of the American people? You, an administration, a party, a movement that said no new wars,
Right.
end the foreign interventions. Now, Lindsey Graham is not really someone of that ideology. He is a
Right.
neocon. He is someone who wants war with Iran and supported Iraq and has been a leading intellectual. This was his initial opposition to Trump, was opposition based on Trump's foreign policy being very different from Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul used to fight all the time about this kind of thing. So Lindsey Graham always thinks war is, or he wants war. He doesn't care whether it's popular or not. Now, it might be popular to blow up drug smugglers or alleged drug smugglers, but again, we should be
Crystal clear that that's what
about
they're
who
doing.
they actually are. An invasion to do regime change in Venezuela, how is that consistent with the America First MAGA ethos? That's what I would want to know. Now, I'm happy, I've said it many times, if the Venezuelan regime is toppled from within by Venezuelans, that would be great, because Maduro is a brutal socialist dictator. He should resign, he should flee, he should go into hiding in China or Russia or North Korea or somewhere. That would be great. Our Nobel Prize winner should assume the leadership of that country. That would be great. It is not our job to manufacture that outcome. It's not our job, the U.S., to manufacture that outcome, barring a vote from Congress to do so. And that's just very important to remember. And the American people are not going to want to send ground troops into Venezuela.
Yeah,
it's not. Obviously, that's not going to enjoy support.
Also, I was reading there's a lot of Latin American countries that were against what President Trump is doing. And so you want to have...
Well, yeah, there are a lot that are for it, too, though. That cuts both ways.
But also you have to be mindful that...
They're like, please kill more of our drug smugglers. Please blow up more ships. That's what the government of Trinidad and Tobago
So then let's
says.
move over to Mexico then. So
Yeah.
they had to be responsible for this latest bust or this latest killing. They had to go pick up the one lone survivor. We don't know what happened to that survivor, whether they're in Mexican prison or not. But Claudia Sheinbaum, the president in Mexico, was like, listen, this is not how we handle diplomacy with the U.S. And so we're going to have an internal investigation on how to handle this. And so we're ruffling the feathers with somebody who's also our ally, a president that we work closely with. And they're like, listen, just let us know what the plan is. I think the same thing that we heard from Democrats and Republicans that are in the U.S. that want to know what's going on, so do other nations that are going to be involved in this and helping in any way by like trying to figure out or arrest or save any survivors. 57 people have already been killed. And so unless all 57 of them were certainly and guaranteed drug smugglers, we have now committed a few murders.
Yeah,
and so we have to make sure we
and
only
maybe
have
they
the
are.
alleged.
Maybe they are all drug smugglers. I would just like to know more, as would the Congressional.
There's no reason for no transparency. I think everyone in America is on board, just like getting criminal migrants out of the
hope they were
country.
all.
People are on board for getting criminal drug smugglers away from our borders. So
Coming up, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a heated exchange with Riley Gaines, conservative activist, online yesterday. We'll be right back to discuss that.